London Care and Support Forum have been asked by 3 of the ICS areas, the local authorities in those areas, that's North Central, South East and South West London, to facilitate a series of events around international recruitment. We're partway through that, and there will be some live events as well as these virtual events, and we will update you as we go along. All the information appears on the LCAS website, and we're also spreading it through WhatsApp as well. Again, we'll give you those contact details. Now, when the project started, between then and now, the situation regarding international recruitment has changed quite dramatically. And we're trying to keep up with the information and keep abreast of the information, which is not always the easiest thing to do. Really, the focus of, or one of the focuses of this event is around getting the right people. Now, many of the problems with international recruitment are very similar to those problems with everyday recruitment. And so the advertisement or the lead for the people you want to recruit is vital to what you're going to get. And if you recruit the wrong people, they will not stay. You won't get the right applicant. You won't retain them, and that is costly, and it will get you, a further set of problems. Sorry to letting somebody else in. These are expensive errors to make, and what we're seeing, what we're hearing from providers is that they are not working the process through in a planned way. They don't have short, medium, or even long-term goals as to where they want to go with their business, and therefore why they're hiring people. And this seems to be particularly prevalent where providers have 0-hour type contracts. Whether providers should actually recruit internationally if they've got 0-hour contracts is another topic, but it's very difficult. If you lose that business, which is on 0 hours, you've then stuck with people that you are liable for, and you cannot, in that sense, just pass on to another. And I guess this will come up later in the meeting, but we are aware, we are being contacted quite regularly by providers who have imported people. They now have no work for them. They're trying to find another source of employment, and it's not going well. They're struggling with the paperwork, with the formalities, and also we're also being told that some companies are in effect passing their staff on to another employer. Technically, that is not within the law. The liability lays with the person who has the license. And I know that the companies are trying to do their best to make sure that the recruits are working, are being funded, and are therefore able to pay their bills and live. But I suspect the system will take a very dim view of that. And again, if you've got issues, do let us know confidentially, and we'll see what we can do to help you out. We have been trying to get more information on this situation, but as you may well have discovered yourselves, it's not easy. Let's get on to the next slide. Okay, just a little bit of background as to who we are. Many of you will know LCAS, London Care and Support Forum. We work across London. We are part of the national body, the Care Association Alliance, and that's one of the sources of information for ourselves. The CAA works as part of the national bodies, and they meet regularly with the Home Office, etc., and pass information on to us. we as LCAS meet with CQC regularly. And again, this is an area, international recruitment is an area of concern to them. We also work with Skills for Care, and Skills for Care's website is a very good source of information for you, not just for international recruitment, but for many other things as well. And we've got a general registered managers meeting on the 17th of January, which is focused on CQC compliance, and Skills for Care will be at that meeting as well. And I will post the invitation details for that meeting in the chat at a later stage today. This really very simply lays out a workforce employment strategy. And I'm sure many of you have these. You have the basic details. You have things like the right job descriptions. You have the right employment contracts, and so on. However, we are very much aware that many providers do not have good employment contracts. They don't have good or even correct job descriptions. And they are not aware of some of the things that they actually need to do to look after their staff. So planning and preparation is absolutely vital. And the issues are common, whether the people you're recruiting are international recruits or people you're recruiting that are already in the UK. And we find that much of the problem actually lays with a poor organizational culture within the providers. And when we talk to staff, we find there are poor levels of support. Training is scant. The company structure doesn't support those people. And this is why they leave. This is why there's a high turnover of staff. And again, in a more general setting, we are running some events around retention of staff. And ditto Skills for Care are also running some very good events which will help you to retain your staff. And it is easy for me to make these statements, and I know how difficult it is at the moment, where there are lots of problems with fees. There are lots of issues going on around retendering from local authorities, and where the ICSs and the local authorities are working together, you are seeing some joint operations there, which again are restricting who is getting work across social care, and we can talk to you about that. Do contact us, contact either Dudley or myself. The contact details will be on one of the later slides, and again I will put them in the chat. But please make sure you've actually got a plan before you simply take people on. Okay. Going forward, or even going back at the moment, we've had more questions over the past few days about sponsorship licenses. We've actually run an event on that. That's the YouTube link. Again, we'll put that in the chat as a separate item. The recording of the event is on the LCAS website on the news page, and you can link in from there. If you can't find them, let me know, let Dudley know. We will point you in the right direction. There's a huge amount of information out there, and again, it's very time consuming to go through it, but and some of it may be out of date already, but we will keep trying to update these things, keep trying to get the information there for you. This is just a bit of a general representation. We often see poor preparation And we are seeing people who are confused or unsure about what they can do. They don't know where to turn. And this also this also happens with international recruits who are contacting bodies like ourselves, contacting bodies like Unseen or the police, because they want to know where they can go for advice. And this is part of the process. And have I seen Dudley join the meeting? Okay, perhaps not. We've got a couple of slides with official information. One around the legal migration statement from the beginning of December. These outline the stats and the policy of the present government, or present government policy. Parts of that policy are really yet to be confirmed. There was a lot of concern when they changed the rules before Christmas, but some of those rule changes don't actually affect social care applicants. If we look to the longer term, the future of health and social care in the UK, there is no way that those areas can operate without importing more people, be they skilled or unskilled, to be trained. And if you look at the way that the health and social care sectors have gone over the years since the early 50s, they have become dependent on international recruits who have done a fantastic job and contributed massively to the UK economy, which sometimes, in my personal view, doesn't seem to have been taken very much into account. We're also hoping that at some point, this government, or maybe the next government, publish a sensible plan for the financial future of social care. And if that was in place, that would make life a great deal easier for all of us. We all know that there is a policy of wanting to reduce net migration. But as far as health and social care are concerned, that isn't going to happen unless something very dramatic turns up. And I'm really not sure what that's going to be. The changes are expected to come in from spring 2024. We've heard April mentioned, we've heard February mentioned, but we don't know. And I suspect that those are unknown entities, and they may well actually depend on the date of the next general election. Okay, just heading back to advertising and getting hold of recruits. This will be pretty standard stuff. You'll all be aware of this. Again, looking forward, in February, we're running a general meeting on recruitment in general, which will have two focuses. One, recruitment. Two, retention. Many providers say the best way of recruiting good staff is through their existing staff. They may pay a bonus, but again, it comes back to organizational culture. If you have a good organizational culture, then people will want to come and work for you. If you don't have that good organizational culture, you will have a high turnover of staff, and you won't have a very good reputation on websites, on social media. We're also seeing in London another issue that is affecting employment, and that is the Mayor of London's initiative to get the London living wage, which is presently £13.15 per hour, as a minimum. Now, a number of local authorities are signed up to this, as are parts of the NHS. we're working with the living wage people, and they are, again, they're working with ADAS, London ADAS, which is the Association of Directors of Adult Social Services. And they're also working with the Local Government Association across London. Some local authorities are now insisting that the living wage is paid. Some, although they pay the living wage to their own staff, are not supporting it being paid to contractors such as dom care providers or residential care homes. There are also differences of view as to what a provider needs to receive from a local authority or the NHS to enable them to pay the London living wage. And I have seen many different figures and spreadsheets bandied about. You'll also be you'll all be familiar with the fair cost of care exercise that went through some time ago, and very little came out of that. Although some local authorities, to be fair, have taken some notice. But what, again, I find worrying with providers is that a number of providers are not able to give a breakdown of their costs. So they don't actually know what their staff cost them. That is an essential. You will be aware of the NHS process for ethical recruiters. Again, there's quite a lot of hints and tips on there, and we'll put a link to that in the chat. And again, it'll be on the website. You may be aware of the code of practice for where it is possible to bring staff in from. It doesn't actually prevent individuals from red list countries from applying to come to the UK, but it's likely that the restricted list will increase. And it also seems, not perhaps unsurprisingly, that the UK is not quite seen as the place it once was to come and work. So do be careful to make sure that you get things right. You may wonder why there's just a slide with 4 people on there, 4 operations. These are all people that are involved in international recruitment, and they're all people that you, as organisations, will be involved with one way or another. Most of you, I would guess, will be CQC registered. You will all be involved in paying taxes, national insurance, and many of you will get funding for some of that training or for other initiatives. Now, there's recently been a major effort started, which is some cooperation between HMRC, the GLAA, which is the Gang Masters and Labourers Association, the National Minimum Wage, that's the national minimum wage, not the living wage, and the EAS, which is the Employment Agency Standards Inspectorate. And they are there, many of you may not have heard of them, but they are there to protect the right of employment agencies, or sorry, employees, that to make sure those employees are treated fairly. There was recently a series of webinars that were run jointly between HMRC, GLAA, NMW and EAS, and there is access to a recording again on the LCAS news page. It's worth going through that because there have been a number of incidents where social care providers have not been paying the national minimum wage. They have been pulled up and they have been fined for it. The fines are large. And that will obviously impact upon the Care Quality Commission. And it does seem that somehow these things tend to impact on people such as the health and safety executive, and you don't want to fall foul of HM Revenue and Customs, because they can make your life a thorough misery. And if you get inspected by some of these people, they will charge you. Even if you are absolutely innocent, you will still be charged for them coming in to inspect your business. And that's a very time-consuming process. So please don't get involved. Get it right. A lot of this information is very basic stuff. It's there for you to take on board. A couple of slides just briefly touching on the topics that we are covering or have covered. There are 10 live events organised and 3 face-to-face events. The face-to-face event or live event for North Central London will be on February the 29th. The other 2, one will be in Croydon and one will probably be around the Southwark area, but we're waiting for the local authorities to come back to us with the actual dates of those. And again, invitations will be sent out. It'll be publicised through the website, WhatsApp, etc. And if there is something that you don't see that you want to know about, let us know, and we'll do our best to find the information to get it for you. The next event is on the 19th of January. And the sign-up detail is on the bottom of that page. Again, we will put that in the chat. So, any Q&A at this point? Or are we all struck dumb? Okay. Well, there will be opportunity later on for more Q&A. That's something in the chat. That's our contact details, which again we'll put in the chat. And just let me check. Okay. Right. I was just checking to see if there's any questions in the chat, but there aren't. So I'll just close that. I see Dudley's joined us. Good morning, Dudley, or good afternoon, Dudley.
They tell me I'm on mute. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Sorry, I was taken by some other elements in regards to recruitment and training, but thank you very much. And I hope there has been so much feedback. Go on, Peter.
Okay, well, thanks very much. We've gone through the slides. So it would be good if we can now come to our presenter. And Paul, do you have some slides? I've made you co-host, so you should be able to share your screen.
That's okay, Peter. I didn't have any slides.
Okay.
What I actually envisage here is a lot more interaction from the people here, because I think that will make a lot more sense.
Yeah.
This is quite a huge area, and there's so much that's going on. You've covered some of the headlines in these areas, but each one of those areas that you covered could be a whole workshop in its own right. So I don't want to dump what I have in my head here. I'm expecting to be challenged a lot more by people out there in the audience. The first thing that I would say is that immigration generally has been, is, and will always remain a political hot potato. Whether we like it or not, it's going to be driving the sector, international recruitment as well. And as a sector, I think we need to really start thinking more seriously how we take some form of responsibility on what is going on, particularly with international recruitment at this stage. There are a number of reasons for that. We worked very hard even to include care workers and senior care workers within the shortage list. That's going to be revised. All indications are that it's going to stay within that list. But given the political climate now, particularly within the current, the ruling party now, you cannot be so sure about that. So I think it's in the interest of the big players, even people like LCAS, to really start looking at how we can take control of the issue, and for government to start coming to us on the best way of dealing with the situation that we have right now. The perception from the government and to some extent the British public is that there is an oversupply of international care workers. Okay. Whatever your own interpretation of that is, this is because, as Peter was saying earlier, they are knocking on doors of providers. Some unscrupulous organizations, they've brought them over and abandoned them. And this is a new territory. It's a new environment. Some of them, a lot of them, they've not been outside their own countries or villages before. And so they don't know how to deal with that particular situation. So the question then is, whose responsibility is it? And I think we need to separate the legal. Obviously, the sponsor has a legal responsibility for this person that they brought in here, and they should discharge that burden. But what do you do with this? Because it's destroying what we fought for. And the gap is going to widen increasingly. Okay, it's not going to change. And as Peter said again, that requirement, that dependency on overseas workers, international workers, is always going to be there. Okay, because we forget very, very quickly how we arrived here in the first place. Okay, and we are going to be there. So one of the things that we're working on, some of you would know, my regular job is as a lawyer, as a barrister. But I founded a couple of organizations within the sector. One of those organizations is the Care Workers Union, which is a trade union for care workers only. And through that, we are able to have visibility of what is going on from the other end of this. We are receiving emails every day. And we're engaging with our providers every day. The number of issues, I would say about 40 to 50% of the issues that we deal with as a trade union involve international recruitment of some sort. And a significant percentage of these 40% is misunderstanding. Yeah, if I can characterize it as that, yeah, misunderstanding between the care provider and the international care worker. Okay. Because they are in a new setting, there are some things that they don't really quite understand, and they start using big words like modern slavery, human rights, all of these things. Yeah, they just churn these things out without really understanding the environment. Even things like minimum wage, we assume that they would understand that. They don't. They probably look up on the internet, they see living wage, they think it's minimum wage. And then they start causing all kinds of problems. They trigger processes within the provider systems, and we have to deal with those issues. And there is no real intermediary there. This is part of the role that we're playing. There's no intermediary there to kind of explain right at the outset to them how the environment here works. Because when they came over, the first priority of the provider, obviously, was to get them settled in. They've got 10 days and whatever the SMS provides for them to settle the worker in and for the worker to start working quickly. they have to then rush through a whole lot of processes, maybe some DBSs and references, all kinds of things in order to settle the worker in. And by the time they finish all those processes, the worker is already working. And because of the nature of the sector, they don't really have the time to acclimatize. And because the provider is very, very busy as well, there is really no time for anyone to allocate and get them to settle in properly. That's no one's fault. It's just the way that things are. It's not, for instance, international students. When they come in, there's a whole process there, and they kind of come in gradually onto this. A lot of them, they are used to the school environment and all of that. Even basic things like driving. You know, we've had care workers get on the wrong side of the road, and you know they have the right to drive. They've come with an international driver's license, which allows them to drive for a year. Okay, and if they come from, I come from Cameroon originally, and I know how the driving there is like, and you send pictures of that, yeah, on TV. Okay. So they would have sent pictures on what they probably thought this was some kind of movies or something, and with the confidence, you know, jump on the road and you do all kinds of things. If you go to the police and you ask them, they will tell you the incidents that they've had around this. Yeah, it's just one example of things that could be explained, and for providers to actually take time. And I know that there are some local authorities that are trying to support provider organizations like Cambridgeshire Care Providers Alliance to help them to acclimatize to driving. So basically get driving instructors to take them around and get them settled in into that process. But that's one example of many areas that somehow somebody somewhere should really engage with and make sure they don't create the wrong impression, because the government are responding to the British public as they should. Okay, so if they are getting these messages and given the political pressure as well on the government, the different sides of the government, they would take advantage of this. And what we all worked very hard to earn would be destroyed very, very quickly. Okay, it just takes a change. I mean, the review that's going to be happening, we don't know which way it's going to go. And do we have a system? Do we have a plan? How are we going to engage with that process? We should be engaging with that process now. We should be telling the government what they've got wrong and how we can help them to fix it. Even something as simple as making sure a care provider is registered with CQC before they get a license, that was recent. It wasn't there to start with. But you would think something so basic, you know, the government would have thought through. And the assumption which we keep making is that the government understands the sector. They don't. A lot of the providers here are the experts in this sector, and we need to find a way of communicating this to the government. My last battle was with someone with sponsorship license who was sending staff to care homes. Okay, just like agency, domiciliary care, you're allocating staff to that. That's not allowed. And then when I did a similar presentation to care providers, a lot of them were doing it. But that's the nature, that's the whole purpose of domiciliary care agency. Yeah, you place staff in establishment, you place them in people's home, you place them in all the different types of settings. Is that a misunderstanding of the drafters of the law, or is that actually rightly, as they consider it, labor, you know, you outsourcing? It is not. It's not, for instance, like the IT sector, where you can send a worker to go and, I don't know, do IT support in an organization somewhere, and you can control that organization remotely. It doesn't work like that. If a care worker goes into a hospital, the basic employment compliance things, yeah, they will stay with whoever sent the care worker there, but they will be working to the instructions of the hospital, the policies of the hospital, at least the majority of them in any event. But as the legislation is currently written, that's not how it is perceived. And there is that missing link between this. And CQC, they are focusing more on their regulatory powers. You know, how do they regulate rather than how do they educate at least the various parts of government? That's also part of their mandate. But they are so busy with a regulation that they are not engaging that part of the mandate. So we have a void there, which someone needs to engage with. All the other organizations that put up there, like HMRC, for instance, they are the same. It's more, are you complying with the tax obligations? And then feeding that information to Home Office, who then use that to do their compliance checks on you. So they need to have some kind of arrangement which understands what the problem would oversees care workers, the different problems that they face, and to work together to kind of resolve that problem before you start blaming people. The compliance things, they can go on, okay, because those are obligations. And that's the other issue. The compliance is enormous. The obligations of owning a license is a lot. And providers are only starting to understand that. And most of them, they are starting to understand compliance after they received the license. And you will see the Home Office, they churn out quite a whole lot of seminars recently when they discovered that providers do not really understand this. And the Home Office, they have the obligation, just like as I was saying, as well for CQC, they have this obligation. You cannot just push out legislation or push out a number of licenses out there and not do anything for people to understand what their duties are. Because, and this point, many people don't understand. The sponsorship license, it's a delegated function of the Home Office. So effectively, you are a kind of representative of the Home Office. Okay. And that's quite important in itself. So when they are coming to do these compliance checks, they forget that, okay, that you are here to support them in their role. Anyway, so it's also in their interest to make sure they facilitate your compliance with those obligations. Okay. I saw one of the things that Peter covered there was the compliance, and there's a huge array of things. I wouldn't dwell on it. Even just the record keeping is huge. The reporting is enormous. Using the SMS system is not as straightforward as one would think. It takes some time for you to get used to. And when things go wrong, who do you turn to? And the compliance with other immigration laws, as well as other areas of law, some of which we touched earlier on employment specifically. You know, these things, they all come together here. So it's a lot cheaper and easier to have local recruit. And that's what the government are saying. But the reason why we're here is because we don't have them. Okay, and we forget, isn't it? So we keep going around in circles here. So my main point is for us to take ownership and really trying to work out, I don't know which other organizations we can join with to work out that strategy to protect what we have And after we protect, secure what we have, we can then see how we expand that. Personally, I think that the focus should be on those that are here. Immediate focus should be on those that are here to find a way of securing them, getting them into employment. There are many reasons for that. The first is there's a lot of investment that has gone into them being here by providers, by the government, by anyone who is involved in that process. The second is just a human one. They are caught up in something, and they should not be victimized for that. That's the second. The third is that some of you who've applied for undefined certificate of sponsorship would have found that it's a lot more difficult for you to get an undefined certificate of sponsorship as opposed to a defined certificate of sponsorship. In other words, it's easier, far easier, 10 times easier for you to recruit someone from overseas than to recruit an international care worker in the country. Okay. I think that's the wrong way around. I think people that are already here, you can scrutinize them a lot more. Yeah. They can go through the normal recruitment process, which Peter described earlier, because they are here. And some of them, they have acclimatized to some extent already. So I don't understand the logic of that. And it's coming across because we're hearing quite a lot of this from providers where the Home Office, they've now realized that they needed to be a lot more stricter. But the way that they're becoming stricter is by increasing the demands on providers. So before, you used to fill out the application, you send to the Home Office, and maybe a week or two, you get your defined or undefined certificate of sponsorship. Not anymore. It's very rare. Okay, you're going to be required to produce a lot more organograms and further evidence, really, which should have been in the first place before you got to this point. Okay, but that's really where we are here. And if we don't work very hard to try and keep what we have in the UK, I just fear that we might get, I don't know, a big hammer on this. I don't know if you saw CHIY's speech sometime in Scotland. This was in relation to NHS, but the indication that he was giving was we are going to increase our own workforce here. Yeah. So in terms of doctors and nurses, we're going to get some more, more places. You have not seen anything yet on care workers, but the same cannot apply, obviously, because there's no system. And that's probably one of the problems within the sector itself. We don't really have a proper career type structure where they can fit in and develop and become what they want to be. Okay. I apologize. I was going to focus a lot more on questions and answers, but I think I've gone on for quite a bit, really. Sorry.
No problem. I think it's very, very insightful. I think one of the things is that there is, for example, lack of guidance, or there's lots of changes. And I think we've come back in the new year. The people, for example, has student visas and not sure where they stand. People who are in the sort of social care work, thinking, how can we bring our dependents in? You've now had this panic where people have heard that it's going to be now, or is it spring? So people are trying to bring in as many people as possible. And other questions, which I'm sure some of the people will want to raise, is things such as what happens for those dependents who are here now? What effect will it have on them? What difference would it make?
Yeah.
And then the backdrop of it, unfortunately, is that you've got so many workforce here presently who don't have a job, through to employers not having enough work for them and issues around sponsorship. So these are some of the sort of the backlog that have happened as a result, what has taken place over the last sort of, from just what the government said. So there's been a bit of a panic, should we say.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
these are the questions that I guess I've been receiving. I'm sure you've been receiving a lot of
Yes.
similar ones as well.
Yes, no, significantly. On the first one, I think they have clarified now. See, that's the issue with things like immigration, where you announce things and before you really go and do your research properly. And so they were working the other way around again on this. So I think it's very clear now that if you have a sponsorship license, you can bring your dependents, okay, for the duration of your sponsorship. So if you have, essentially, there is no need for you to rush if you already have a certificate of sponsorship. Yeah, so that's the current position on that. And I think Peter would have, I don't know whether he shared the letter that I wrote down to the Prime Minister in relation to that, because I'm fairly confident that that kind of policy would not stand. And I think the government had said that this was going to be one of the things. They don't really want to go through the courts here, because I think it's fairly clear that they would not really have legs to stand. This is right in the center of Article 8. Yeah, right to life. Yeah, to home. Yeah, and family life. Yeah. So I think that position is clear. And for those that are here, like students, it's still the same. You can apply as normal. It doesn't really affect you. Yeah, I've actually had one successful challenge, but that was more irregularities for the students. Yeah, but once we clarified that, it did work. So you can have that. I think the issue is going to be after the elections. So what are they going to do? Yeah. Because if you're applying now, even before spring, the policy does not say that you should not apply for your dependents. It shouldn't come with your dependents. It doesn't say that. But my suspicion from the various applications that they are getting longer and longer now, the time frame. So they can make it a lot more difficult through that route for you. And obviously we got the increase in the fees, the amount of money that you need to have, the salary that you need to have in order to demonstrate this. I think that's likely going to be where we are going to struggle. Okay, workers are going to struggle as well. Because if they don't, they are not asking them to have the 38,000 or something, or whatever it was on that. They're not asking them that. But what else can they introduce to make it a lot more difficult for them to meet that criteria? I don't know.
They did say they're doing in increments as well. The government did backtrack, which was quite interesting.
Yes.
And I think you're right. I think the thing that I think everyone here today should understand is that the changes, for example, won't be coming in place until spring. And even when they do, no change usually takes a while before it comes in. I think it's important to understand that. And so I think it's good to hear. So I know we've got, for example, just another half an hour. And I know I've got lots of questions, lots of people ask me questions, but we've got people here today. And I always say I wouldn't necessarily say you free, but we've got potential free legal advice for once, of just where you can ask questions or areas you're unsure. So it would be good to raise a hand, or even put in the chat box if you don't feel comfortable or confident enough to answer a question, we can answer the question. But I think it's always good to maximize using someone with so much knowledge who's also working in the sector and understanding some of the pain points and that people are experiencing. So feel free if one wants to raise a hand or ask a specific question. because even if we can't answer it today, we'll take it away and come back and actually give you an update as well, which we try and do as well. So feel free to answer the question. Or
Yeah, one of the things I didn't say, Dudley, was that I started the clock here. You know what start the clock means? So I'm going to be sending a bill after.
That's fine. I know lawyers always charge, and lawyers charge a steam amounts of money. Barristers charge even more. So that I definitely know. So, but I think it's hugely important. Just very quickly, I had someone had spoken to me, and a question they'd asked is that they came in with a student visa and they had a dependent with them, and that dependent and they're not sure, and the dependent has worked in a care home and wondered what they can do, because they wanted, as they're here already, whether they should apply under the sponsorship license or whether they should still remain as a dependent of that student who came in.
Yeah, it'll be safer to apply and switch over because dependent means you're dependent on their visa, isn't it? And if it's in education, there is going to be a significant limit on that. So if they're already here, then their visa is probably, I don't know, maybe 3 years, I don't know, something like that. So when that expires, your dependency also expires. Whereas if you have a sponsorship, the principal visa is still there, and things can switch as well.
Okay. Do they have to, they can apply for that sponsorship whilst in this country, or do they have to go?
Yes, so long you're legally here. And even if I've seen some people do this, actually, you can apply here. But when you're completing the application, you are locating the certificate of sponsorship, there is a box which says whether the person applying would leave the country and come back in. And I've seen some providers use that because it's a lot faster. They will not stop you coming back in because you already have a valid visa. But because of the problems with undefined certificate of sponsorship, it takes a lot longer and it's a lot more demanding. Some providers choose for the applicants to go outside the country and apply from there.
Thank you very much for that. I've got a question from Hanjo. I hope that's right. So please feel free to ask your question.
It's Hakeem. Hi, so Hakeem Andrew, and I'm the owner of a care provider right at home, Croydon. You mentioned that it's harder to onboard somebody who's already here why is that? What are the main things that make it harder to do it when someone's actually here?
It's just bureaucracy. It's a home office thing, and you get less as well, because when you apply for say 8, you're not always going to get 8 undefined certificate of sponsorship. Yeah, so it's just, I think that's one of the strategies that they are using to restrict what they think they're doing, restricting the numbers. Yeah.
Okay, because ours isn't about volume. It's more that we get a lot of people who are here who are saying they want to come and join us. We haven't got the license yet, but we were looking at that should be an easier way, because you can see, touch, you can invite into the office. But I was surprised for you to say that it's actually, so if it's on an individual candidate, is that still going to be more complicated than somebody who's not actually in the country?
Yes, yeah, this is the experience. If you speak to any provider who's applied for undefined, they will tell you that that's the case. And we have regular discussions within the Care Providers Alliance forum in relation to this. And everyone is having the same kind of experience. And there was a change about 5-6 months ago where your undefined certificate of sponsorships, they are automatically renewed by the Home Office. So those that preempted this process had applied for a significant number of undefined certificate of sponsorship. So now they have a large number there that they can play with. And this is really where I think we're going to have a bottleneck. And providers need to be smarter and start preparing for this. I think this is a conscious decision. Okay.
Connected with that, do you have any visibility of how different it is in different parts of the country from a point of the application?
No. Even though we have the Care Workers Union, we have care workers across the country. But the provider association that I belong to is Cambridgeshire Care Providers Alliance. So it's Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. So I have more visibility there in terms of providers. But for the care workers, it's all over. It's the same.
All right, thank you.
So I think there's another question I think he wanted to put through as well was more across that there are a lot of workers now in UK. And I think whereas before, and part of this was about advertising and you would go to which country with Africa, continent, Asia. But if they're here now, the chances that you could, for example, I can arrange an interview, you can call them to come to your workplace, you can look in them in the eyes now where it was done virtually, or for example, so now you actually get to see someone. And so if you like them, then I guess it's the process for that. How easy is it for them to switch from one sponsorship license to the next, which is the biggest concern for a lot of, I get, people, I've got 10 people, what do I do? So how easy is it for them to switch?
No, that particular aspect is not too complicated. It's not too difficult. And it happens fairly quickly. If all, particularly the person who is sponsoring, the new provider who is sponsoring, if they are compliant, it should be very straightforward on that. Yeah.
Okay, that was my question. I got the impression you were saying it was more difficult to do it when they're here than when they're not, which didn't.
No, it's the undefined, getting the undefined certificate of sponsorship.
Right.
If you already have those, then you should have no issues.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess the other question I keep getting asked is this. So for example, if I am provider A and I brought across, for example, a care worker, but I don't have enough hours for them. And then I have you as provider B, and I then say, I haven't got enough hours. Do you want to take over the sponsorship license of the care worker because you have enough hours? How do we facilitate that? Do we speak to the Home Office first? How long would that take? And then B, what would be the general costings to that? I guess is a lot of the time I get that from various people.
Yeah, the provider B would need to have a certificate of sponsorship, an undefined certificate of sponsorship. So they would need to allocate that to the care worker and go through the normal process. The cost is very similar. I think they increased it recently. It's, I think, 1,090 something pounds for that actual application. And then the visa application is about, I don't know, 350 or something along those lines on that. But one new thing that's increasing now is Home Office interviews. Okay. In 90% of the cases, the Home Office would interview the care worker as well as the provider. And the interviews are back to back. Okay. And they are going to test the credibility of what each of them is saying. That's happening a lot more, almost on 90% of the cases. Yeah.
Dudley, the way you described didn't seem to really involve the carer. And I wouldn't see that it should be that way. It should be the carer is making the decision to move, not two providers, employers making that decision.
I mean, I just generally mention that.
Yeah, but it's quite, because that's part of the problem.
I agree.
That's part of the problem that we've got, is that people are not seeing the carer as the center of this.
Yeah, it's also in the interest of the carer.
Well, it should be their decision.
Yes.
Because they got the right to work where they want to. They got the right to move if they want to.
Yeah, they will have to apply anyway. When they will need to go through the recruitment processes of provider B anyway.
Yeah.
So it's them going through that process. It's not going to be the provider going through it. Because one of the questions that you get in these interviews is whether you have gone through proper, effective recruitment process. Yeah, so that applies whether you are outside the country or you are inside the country. That's it.
I think
we also get people who got certain amount of hours with their current company, and they've got 2 days a week that they want to work for somebody else.
Yeah, that's fine, isn't it? That's within the rules, the 20 hours.
Yeah, but it's not the greatest for their no day off.
Yes, and that 20 hours, our some providers use it very effectively as a means of effective recruitment in itself. So you offer them the additional. This is on top of the minimum 40 hours or whatever they contracted with. So they then work up to 20 hours with another provider. And if the other provider, if they match what they need, then it's easier to recruit them. You see what I mean?
Yeah, but it's promoting no days off.
Yeah, shouldn't we? But there we go. Yeah, yes, there's a hand up there, Dudley.
Yes, sorry to kind of interrupt you, but I will need to go. I've just had a brief question. I'm looking at it from the local authority commissioning side of things. Is there any guidance published at all with regards to the employer's obligations, or just under the guidance, you know, good practice, with regards to step to take to involve the employees or the workers that have been that they're working under the certificate of sponsorship, if the sponsorship is suspended or revoked?
No, I haven't seen guidance in when you get into that scenario in itself, but I have been involved in a couple of cases where they terminated a contract of a provider after they suspended their license. Okay, and one needs to really be careful about that, because what the provider needs to demonstrate is where they can still fulfill the contract with or without, okay, with or without the license.
No, I understand that side of the risk, but it's more like the responsibility towards the workers. So, for example, the communication, because they might not be aware that the license has been suspended, and their situation might be very precarious and so on.
Yeah, well, what I think the commissioners should do is to help on some of the things that I was describing earlier. First, as a group, to recognize that this is a problem and be proactive in dealing with it, because you don't have any obligations really towards the sponsored, do you? You don't have legal obligations, do you?
Well, I wasn't more looking at the legal obligation, more, you know, if there was some published guidance that would help us to ensure that a sort of reasonable process from the humanitarian side of, not just the legal side,
yes,
is followed. But
no, I haven't said that, but it's good that you're thinking that, because what I was describing earlier in relation to everyone getting involved and taking stock of the situation is exactly what we're thinking now. I don't think you can do it independently. It's probably better to do that engaging with the group of providers, organizations like LCAS, for instance, or Care Providers Alliance, organizations like that, to really, for instance, support care providers for them to meet their compliance obligations. I gave the example of driving, and local authorities are supporting care providers to get driving instructors for these care workers. So I think it's more proactive. But when it's gone wrong, for instance, a license is revoked, you just have contractual obligations, really. They come into effect.
thank you.
Okay. I see Peter, your hand is up.
Yeah, I was just going to say there are a couple of questions in the chat that would be worth having a look at, rather than me reading them out. And also, just coming back to Elena and the point she's made, some local authorities seem to be taking a different view to others. Some have a much more proactive approach to trying to help international recruits who've been, if you like, dumped. They've got, I guess, links on board, and because some of them have been actually doing some work with modern day slavery.
Yeah.
So there is some awareness there of what's going on. And we're also seeing, which is slightly tangentially, some local authorities who are looking at exploitation in a general sense, because that's perhaps back to the national minimum wage, which is if you like, low level exploitation. But they are becoming perhaps aware of what might be seen as their overall or overarching responsibilities. And we've seen one or two getting involved with bodies like Citizens Advice Bureau, etc., to actually provide a source which they're trying to filter down to providers to make sure that they're getting it to their employees. How far that's going, it's very difficult to actually tell, because we've had similar instances with ordinary recruits, not trying to prejudice against international recruits, but we often find that recruits in social care providers don't know their rights anyway. They don't have a proper contract of employment, and they're often not very well treated. So that is an issue, a wider issue, rather than just international recruits, I think. But Paul, if I could refer you to the questions in the chat. So there's a couple of interesting ones there.
Yes. The first one I've seen here, and I think I started in the middle, was, what do you do? Do you report to the Home Office or not? If it's going wrong, it's going wrong on this. The first thing is to really support the employer to challenge the employee, to challenge the employer directly on this. And you have obligations. I think when we get too involved in this, we'll forget about our citizen obligations. Okay. Call the Home Office or the police or whoever you think you need to call for this. But the emphasis is what I explained before. We need to engage other care providers associations, all of them, local authorities. They need to come together and deal with this as a big problem for those that are here already. You can get them to, for instance, get the Care Workers Union mentioned earlier, that we've challenged quite a few providers successfully and dealt with, and we've also contacted the Home Office and engaged with them on several of these cases. If you have the capacity for that, yeah, please do, but it's quite involving in itself. That's why Peter mentioned local authorities, referring them to Citizens Advice Bureau, referring them to other organizations that will help in those specific instances. So I would rather use that route and support them directly, or refer them to Care Workers Union, Citizens Advice Bureau, because even if the Home Office gets involved, it's a whole long process in itself. It's not going to deal with their immediate issues now. Okay. And the Home Office are catching up with quite a few of these providers who eventually catch up as well with that. Okay. Yeah, we have a carer working with us for over a year now. They switched from residence permit to sponsorship visa. How do we go about keeping them and being compliant? Yeah, if they are on sponsorship, then it's it's very straightforward, isn't it? You just need to be compliant yourself as a holder of a sponsorship license in itself. So you've normally allocated your certificate of sponsorship to them. They have applied for their visa after you allocated a certificate of sponsorship, and they should get a yes or a no from the Home Office. Once they get a yes, they just work as normal. Okay. Yeah, there is someone asked about, is there published guidance? I think we've answered that. Yeah, and there are a couple of links that have been shared as well within the forum. I think those are the only two questions that I saw there.
I mean, I also want to touch on, we've got someone's hands raised. Is it Margaret, I believe?
Yes. Yes, Mark.
My question is a little bit different, but also concerning the COS. I've been trying to find out, because some of the recruited overseas staff we have been asking for a refund from the Home Office for some of their money. The situation was like this. The first applications they made, there was a correction of, I think it's again change of, I think in April last year, there was a change of monies that were coming in. I think like they're doing it this time. So our office put in the COS with that pay, and the Home Office rejected that pay, because there was another pay which had just come in at that time, which was changing the situation. So they quickly paid again more money for more COS to be allocated to them. And they were allocated those COS the second time. Now they are saying we should receive a refund for the first ones. Is that something right or wrong? Is that something doable? Do you know?
Yeah, did you cancel the certificate of sponsorship? Did you cancel all of them? The ones that you didn't require?
They were kind of sent to them. They were sent to them for them to apply for the visas.
Before you apply for the visa, there is an option within the SMS system for you to cancel the certificate of sponsorship that you don't require. So if you cancel that, you should get a refund.
You should get a refund on that. What about if you had already, if you had already issued it, and then the Home Office said, no, this pay is very low. You are not going to get the visa for that.
Okay, so they have applied for a visa already.
They did at that time. They did at that time.
Yeah, they've used it. They've used the.
No, I think. Am I right here? What I'm trying to explain? I beg your pardon. The COS was given out to them, but the Home Office rejected the pay, that the wages are low. The wages are very low. And
yeah, let me describe the refund process.
Yeah.
When you assign the certificate of sponsorship, until the person applies for a visa, you can cancel that certificate of sponsorship and you get a refund.
Right.
Okay. So after you apply for your visa, using that certificate of sponsorship, you have used that certificate of sponsorship.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Okay.
So you can't get a refund then on that now?
No, you can try, but the rules would no. But you can try. You can write to the Home Office a general email address, which is what we use to follow up refunds anyway. Yeah, they will direct the appropriate place. All they can do is to tell you, no, you're not entitled to it. But
is the sorry, just to be clear here, is the refund for the care company or for the candidate, the employee?
It's the employer, isn't it, who's paying for this, isn't it?
It's the COS.
Yes.
And it was for their wages, because they say that we fixed we put in a low wage. When you're applying for it, there is a low wage. So the employer put in the wage which was there originally. But as soon as the changes were made in April, they noted that quickly and said, no, this is wrong. So we had to review again by making a correction of the new wage. And they accepted the second one, but rejected the first one.
Yes. Now, that's the salaries. Yes, you are paying the salary that you put on the certificate of sponsorship. I understand.
Yeah, you're right there. Yeah, that's the salary I'm talking about. Yes,
Yes.
that's what I was trying to, yeah.
Yes, I understand that. But the main point is that you have assigned the certificate of sponsorship and they have used that certificate of sponsorship to apply for a visa. That visa application has been rejected because the salary was below the threshold. Yeah.
Yeah. So we can't get that money back.
Not according to the rules, but you can try.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thanks.
Julian.
Julian, sorry.
Are you there, Julian?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
I think we can't hear you anymore, Julian.
You're gonna mute, Julian. Okay. Whilst Julian comes back into play, we just had an email in ourselves where we've got CQC who will be coming to present at the next meeting on the 20th. Well, no, not the 19th, the 25th of January. Just to make people aware, we've been speaking directly with CQC around where their stance is around overseas recruitment, especially in line of the changes and what's going on, modern day slavery. And I think it's important just to understand that. We've got 5 minutes left, so I just wanted to remind people about that. We also will have our next international recruitment meeting, which is taking place, and Peter must have shared it already on the slides in the group, on the 19th. I think this is one of the areas which is hugely important because as you've seen today, a lot of providers just don't understand or have a knowledge of what's going on. And I think it's important just to really be coming to meetings like this, finding about what's taking place, the changes, how it's going to take place. So actually bring questions, fill out the questionnaires, what you need to know, because we're trying to speak to wonderful people like Paul Tree, CQC, Skills for Care, the government, Home Office, really to update you. We don't really want you to fall foul of what could happen as well. So I'm in the group, I've put in the next meeting on the 19th, and that's around application process. It's also around the costs that we've seen, legislation around there, and making the most of the interview. And we'll have someone in especially regards to interview techniques and how to best get out of it. And of course of time, so I've got Rhoda wants to probably speak quickly if that's possible.
Hi.
Hello, Rhoda.
Hello.
Hi. So quick question. Thank you so much for the session. It's been insightful. Sorry, I'm just raising my hand at this time. Let me just ask quickly. As a company, when we did have loads of contracts, we employed like a lot of staffs and sponsorships and all of those. But right now with the situations of things in the economy, we've lost a couple of contracts, and as such, we've lost, like we're not able to provide the number of hours that some staffs need to meet the requirement by the Home Office. So what can you advise that we do as a company with the staffs that are not working at the moment? We can't just tell them to go, that we don't have the job, then they get 60 days and all of those. But what would you advise would be the best practice to get this sorted?
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea of sponsorship is your obligation to provide work for them. Yeah, you cannot go away from that. And when you are not able to provide that work, you need to then update the system that you are not able to provide work. In other words, you are effectively terminating their employment. Okay. And if you terminate their
Oh.
employment, they have 60 days to try and find alternative sponsorship.
Okay. But for credibility purposes, we're trying to not make that affect our own rating, from an A rating to a B rating. At the moment, do you think that would affect our rating as sponsors, just in case in the future we do have loads of job too that would require us to sponsor people?
Yeah, that's one of the criteria that the Home Office is going to consider. Yeah, they are not going to respond immediately. But how long do you have on the license now?
5 years.
No, yeah, you've used. When did you have your license?
And we had our license. Oh, okay. We have about 3 years left on the license.
About 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's more likely going to affect your license if you don't deal with the situation than if you do.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Sorry, Dudley, there's another hand.
Yeah, we've got a hand very quickly. Yes, please, by all means, you can come in now. Is that a Defi?
He seems to be frozen at the moment.
Terry?
Hello, thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yes. My question is, right now there are so many people. There are some people that they have a number, the working hour, but where they are working, they've decided to, like, for an example, I have somebody that has been working for over a year in a care home, and at the end of the day, she needs a certificate of sponsorship. There's a number of working hours. She has worked very hard in the company, but at the end of the day, the company were not able to offer her a certificate of sponsorship, which is so unfortunate for her. So, and I can see there are some other people not having the hours to work. How can it's really I don't know, how does that happen? When I hear that there are some people that doesn't have hours to work, and meanwhile there are some that are really working, they're working overtime, and they are willing to maybe to get more staff that can relieve them. Which this is even happening in Scotland. How is that happening? I don't understand. Sir.
Yes. Yeah, earlier on, Defi, that's what I was saying, that the sector and the big players like LCAS and others is to engage and see how they can solve this problem. But one of the things that they can do legitimately is to use their 20 hours. Yeah. So the worker is currently sponsored, but they don't have enough work with their the person who sponsored them, the organization that sponsored them. So they can use the 20 hours initially just to keep going. But ultimately, they are going to need a certificate of sponsorship for anyone else that's going to offer them work.
Yes, but there are still these other people that they have the working hour, the people are working really hard, but no sponsorship. It's really
yes.
Unfortunate to know.
Yeah, they need to find a sponsor. So it's as simple as that. A sponsor that has got work for them.
Okay.
I mean, one of the things that it might be counterintuitive, but actually terminating their current sponsorship can actually help them, because they will not be able to find a new sponsorship unless the old one is terminated anyway.
The person does not even have any sponsorship because the company is not ready to sponsor her.
What's their current status? What's their current immigration status?
The person is a dependent, the spouse to a student visa holder.
Yeah, so they have more leverage, isn't it? They can work.
Yes, but the person's visa is already expiring at the end of this January. Meanwhile, she's been working for the past 1 year. She has very vast experience. She has other certifications, but the company is not ready to sponsor her.
Yeah.
So I don't know. And meanwhile, I'm hearing that there are some other people that don't have that 0 hours of working, and meanwhile they have the sponsorship. So it's not balanced, sir.
No, it's not. It's not. You know, I think we all we all agree there on that. That's why I keep repeating that it's working together as a sector. And when I say men, I'm not just referring to organizations like LCAS. I'm referring to providers as well, working with each other and to find a way to resolve this, because it is in the interest of the providers themselves to make sure this works, because the public are picking up on this and they are feeding this into government, and the government will respond to that, and the response that we receive might not be what we want.
I think it's very important. Sorry I think because of time as well, I think we could go on for a very long period of time. I think the whole point here and part of these meetings are to give advice and knowledge, guidance and support, but also as well, Peter Webb has contact us as well. As I said, we're speaking not to the likes of Paul Chi, we're speaking to a raft of people to try and make things better. Hopefully we'll be able to get through to the Home Office and actually share some of the stories that are here to make a difference. But in numbers, it makes a difference, because if they only hear one thing or they don't hear anything at all, then they won't make a change. So improving that is what we're here for. We're also supporting those providers as well. There's also funding in Southwest London as well for bringing people on board. So that can help with, for example, your applications, but also as well in North London as well, what we've been doing as well, supporting with pastoral care for when people are here, and that could be with accommodation. And finally, in Southeast London, we're looking at things around recruitment and retention, and we've got a few different projects going on in there to support the workforce. So what we are trying to do is to take what's going on with people having on the ground, and also trying to support and guide you and give you the right advice, so you're not falling foul of the law of the Home Office. And we know things like the HMRC and being compliant, especially the likes of CQC as well. So it's a hugely important area and growing space, of which you should watch. Be in touch with us. If you want to be in touch with us and speak with Paul Chi, or maybe get some advice from him, please send us your email address and we'll put you in touch. This is a long ongoing one. We'll be back on the 19th of January, where we will be sharing more around how to win credible workers or workforce, and different types of interviews, also as well the cost and how much it's costing transferring, which is a big thing now, transferring of sponsorship licenses and so forth. Peter, I'm not sure if you'd like to add anything else from there, and thank you very much, Paul Chi, for joining us today and really giving us your helpful knowledge as well.
Pleasure.
All I would like to say is again, thank you, Paul. Thank you all for coming. We have been around for a long time in social care, and we have been trying to get people to come out of their silos, local authorities, CQC, Home Office, etc., to come out of their silos for many years and to work together. It is a faint hope, but in some areas it's getting better. And this is an example in a way. There are 17 local authorities involved in this. I'm not sure that some of them actually know they're involved, but it has been something of a struggle, and getting the various parties to work together is a struggle. And as small to medium-sized enterprises, you are the backbone of social care. And as Paul said, it's working together. We keep saying to people, work together, talk to your enemies, make them your friends. There was some old quote somewhere about keep your enemies closer than your friends. But as social care providers, you need to work together, not just with international recruitment, but it supports your business continuity policies. It supports training, recruitment, the whole system. So, and please come back for the other meetings. Thanks again to you all for coming, and we look forward to seeing you again. Many thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.